I do want to get your take, Mitch, both the men's and the women's basketball multi-team events, but also the influx of those multi-team events that feature NIL compensation, like the Players Era Invitational, the Players Festival, or whatever it is on the men's side out in Las Vegas. Teams are opting for those tournaments, because their players can make money. So it's not just like you're throwing all this money at a trip to, I don't know, the Maui Invitational, and all you get is a free vacation and 3 basketball games in 3 days and wear and tear on your body later. But at the same time, like, there is part of me, and maybe it's just because I'm a college basketball purist and I miss Bill Walton immensely, that is so sad to see teams willingly, and granted, we live in a capitalist society, so I respect it, but choosing to play in these team events that maybe aren't in a traditional Thanksgiving or holiday weekend location, but in turn actually put dollars in the players' pockets if they win the tournament. So I respect it, but I just don't want Maui to die, and Maui's dying, and it's very sad.
I think Maui's going to die, unfortunately.
It's so sad. But Baha Mar looks okay. Like, Purdue out here packing a ballroom this past weekend. The weekend
I watched that Purdue game. I think that's going to change too. I think what we're seeing, I don't know how many if this was really forecast when the NIL era sort of started. But I think that the MTE game is changing in a dramatic way, and I think it's happening fast. I think that you are going to see more events like the Players Era sort of pop up where they are. It's kind of the flip. Okay, so pre-NIL for years and years and years, teams paid to go to these events, and they paid a lot of money to do it.
Oh, to get to Hawaii ain't cheap. Trust me. I know. I'm planning on a honeymoon.
Not just that, but like sometimes there were like entrance fees to these tournaments and stuff. And I'm talking about like 5 figures, like, for on the women's side anyways. I imagine it's probably more expensive on the men's side. But for what's the tournament in Fort Myers, or the Gulf Coast Showcase is the one I'm thinking of. That was like, a couple years ago, that was like 30 grand to get into. A couple years ago when I went per team, when Iowa and Kansas State and North Carolina and Florida Gulf Coast were all there, it was expensive. And I think what you're seeing now is, kind of a flip side of that, where you're having some tournaments offer money to teams and players and that sort of thing. You're going to see, especially the big time programs like, this Players Era Invitational, Duke, Texas, South Carolina, UCLA. You're going to see them far more often than not opt for those NIL tournaments and those NIL opportunities rather than the prestige or whatever it is of going to play in Baha Mar or the Maui Invitational or whatever it is. It's hard to get to some of those places. It's a lot easier to get to Vegas than it is Hawaii. It's probably a lot easier to get to Vegas than it is the Caribbean. You don't have to deal with passports and all that good stuff, right? True. It's in the lower 48. So yeah, I think that we're seeing the MTE game shift in a big way when it comes to some of these events. I think you're going to see more and more of these events figure out, all right, well, if we can't make money off the teams, like, how else do we get them to come here? Like, do we comp their hotels and their meals and just say, hey, all you got to do
Vegas.
All you got to do is get here and show up, right? So, these tournaments that have, these long histories and stuff like that, they might continue to exist. I think that they're not going to continue to pull in like the headliner top 25 teams in the country, though. Like, I think the days of like, seeing a top 10 matchup in Maui, that's going away. Friday night on the men's side, we saw Purdue and Texas Tech in that game. That was a top 15 matchup. I think that's going to go away eventually, unless the Maui Invitational and Baha Mar decide, hey, we're also going to pay you. We're going to give your players some NIL opportunities, or if it's in Vegas or whatever.
because that's who can pay them. Which, I mean, the problem with Maui is, let's be real, like the tourism industry of Hawaii runs that tournament. And in case you missed it, there were some wildfires out there in Lahaina, and they don't have a ton of money right now.
Which is also the case for a lot of those events in the Caribbean. Like they're run by the tourism boards, or they're run by the resort hosting them, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had to get that tangent out there, just because as we look ahead to some of these other games this week, like it does hurt me. Like, I'm very excited, regardless of where those games are being played and who's being compensated and who's not. I'm excited to have tons of basketball on my television and I guess on my laptop this week. But in the same vein, it's just the purist in me is very sad. One MTE that I will have my eye on, but maybe not because it's on Flow Hoops, is the Cancun Challenge. Here's a sampling of some of the teams that we've already talked about, some of them, but that will be down there in Mexico this week. South Dakota State, perennially a pretty darn good team out of the Summit League. They will play UNC in their opener. NC State and Green Bay, Richmond, who we already talked about, TCU, K-State, and Ivy League perennial power Columbia, all in the Cancun Challenge. And so that's one I know I will have my eye on. Mitch, any other MTEs or games that are coming up this week during Feast Week that you've said, ooh, okay, I'm going to maybe pop on or at least box score watch?
Yeah, the Paradise Jam, especially the Island Division, is kind of interesting. You have Vanderbilt, you have Oregon State, who's 5-1. You have BYU, who has some interesting talent on that team, and Virginia Tech. I think that's some interesting matchups there. Other than that, yeah, I think you kind of said it. The Cancun Challenge, the whatever the tournament is with Maryland and Kentucky, is that?
I think it's Baha Mar. I think that's Maryland and Kentucky is Baha Mar, which never forget.
It is the Puerto Rico shootout.
Oh, which actually, I relived this with our friend Raina Harmon, now the head coach of Florida Gulf Coast. Never forget when Iowa got stranded on their way back from the Puerto Rico shootout in Jacksonville, Florida, and I went and hung out with them in the airport in 2018. And little did we know then that Megan Gustafson would go on to be the National Player of the Year. Good times. Shout out to, but once again, that's expensive, because part of why they got stranded in Jacksonville was there was only one charter plane. It had to go get another team, bring them back, and then go get Iowa. It was a whole to-do. So I understand why we are seeing less of these international holiday weekend tournaments, but still hurts my heart nonetheless. But very excited. My heart is happy by seeing how much basketball will be played this week.